What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So this video, we're going to be rebuilding this here 47RE. So let's get started. Alright, so first thing that we did was we got our clutches over here soaking in transmission fluid. Now these things, they call for ATF +4. So I'm using Castrol Transmax ATF +4. It has all the lubricity stuff that you need to keep your clutches and everything proper in a older Chrysler transmission. +4, don't forget it. First thing we got to do is strip off all our linkages. So we got our kickdown cable here, our shifter here, park neutral switch here, kickdown lever, and shift lever. So let's get all that stuff off and then get going on something a little more interesting. Alright, so after you got all that stripped off, we can flip the tranny up and start pulling this overdrive extension housing off. And for that, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 7/16 bolts. And there's the extension housing. Just discard the old gasket. There's this port, there's this plug, a cover right here. This one's very rusty, so I'm going to go ahead and spray this down with some penetrant. And then set this aside for further teardown and inspection. Alright, so after you got your overdrive and extension housing off, make sure you have your bearing and this thrust plate. This is a selective thickness thrust plate, so that needs to stay with that bearing. For now, we'll just stick them in the back of the overdrive, or in the front of the overdrive housing where they came off. Also, pull out the overdrive apply piston. This thing has 2 tabs in it, so you can't really put it in the wrong way. But we're just going to pull it out and put it in there to sit for now. So now we got this ripped down about as far as we can go right now. So we'll turn our attention to the pan and valve body. So this pan is garbage. As you can see, we got two holes patched in it and one almost drilled all the way through. So this pan, junk. She's going to be getting a different pan than that one. So this tranny with the pan off, I don't know if you can see in the filter there, all those chiclets. So that's either from someone drilling some holes in the bottom of the pan, or this transmission has seen some stuff. So once that's all out, you're going to take these, I believe they are also 7/16. Yep. Take these 7/16 bolts out of the valve body, and that whole thing will come on out. Once you got all those loosened off, you're going to come around here, and as the valve body's coming out, you want to push this electrical connector out as well, because the electrical connector comes out with the valve body. So does this stub shaft right here. But it's already moving. You'll have a connector, just may need a tap. That's almost all the way out. Come back around to this side. Pull it out. While pushing down on the connector, and it is hung up again. There we go. I like to try to leave the bolts where they are, just so you know where they go again. They are different lengths, so sometimes that can be a little tricky. But take your time, angle her down, and there's our valve body. So we'll set that aside as well for a little later. But right now, we start taking this band anchor out, as well as this one, and flip her over and start getting to the pump. Once you have your valve body out, you can pull out this accumulator. Factory, they are just a plastic piece, but we're going to be upgrading that in this unit here. We'll set that aside. I'll do the jam nut for the band here, so that one's loose. Come around to the other band. That one loosened off as well. And I just dropped the wedge down in there. So now we'll flip her over, get the pump out, and then we can get taking the rest of the guts out. Alright, so we've got our pump out. So after you get the bolts out, there are two holes right across from each other that are threaded, and you can get some slide hammers in there and pop them out, or you can take a long bolt, thread it in, and take a pry bar off of the bell housing here and just kind of pop it. So once that's out, again, we'll set that aside to deal with after we get everything apart. The old gasket. And from here, you can pop out the front band, which this one here is right gone. It has started to eat into the case. And this stuff here, these shims, make sure you get those. Keep them rest of it will just slide out like this. To get the back one-way roller out, there is a snap ring on a collar here that you got to take off, and then this piece just pops right out. So there's a snap ring. Rotate it and it'll pop out. So now we can also check the rear band. You see how it is, and the rear drum that it rides on. And now you can also pull out the roller bearing. Just be careful with this sucker, because if it pops apart, you're done. Now everything in the bottom here just stays here unless it is worn real bad, which in this case, it is not at all. So now, we pull out our servos. So basically you just need a giant clamp to clamp on here, push down here, pop out the snap ring, rest comes out. So now I got everything out of the case. Basically now I just have to wash everything down, blow it all out with air, and set this aside for the moment. So I'm just going to wash her down with some brake clean. Get all the old crap out of it. This will get the main stuff out of it. And then I will take it out of here and clean up the rest of it. Alright guys, so we got all the stuff out of the case. It's all set aside. It's set aside, gonna have to go through inspecting it and stuff like that, check for excessive wear. Now we're gonna take away the overdrive, take apart the overdrive housing. So to do that, there's this little plate on the back here that's held in by two Torx bolts. I had to chisel one out because it was hard seized in there. And then once you got that plate out, you flip it over, take this locking, it's basically an O-ring, or basically a piece of, just a little piece of wire that's in there. So once you take this little ring out, you pull out these clutches here. There is another snap ring. So you can get out there. It is a waved snap ring, so I don't know if you can see the profile of that, but it goes like this. So set that aside. And there's also another snap ring underneath of that. Get that other snap ring out, and it is not waved. So set it aside. Then once you have those out, then you come around to here. And there's this plate across here. It's held in by 2 Allen screws. I had to chisel one out because this one's a hair rusty. And then you want to flip it upside down here. Take your spreader pliers, spread the spring, and that'll fall out. Lift it off, and there, our housing is all taken apart. So we set this aside. So we can set that aside. You see here where the snap ring at the back of the case rides. This is your speed sensor tone ring for your output shaft speed. There's the output shaft, the bearing. This here is your other clutch pack. So now we can take all this apart, clean it up, inspect it. As soon as you got this bearing and stuff off, then we're gonna have to go over to a shot press. So we can compress the spring that's in here and expose that snap ring that's down in here, and so we can get it out. So once you're at this point with the overdrive housing, we got the bearing off and got it in our press with these 2 plates on the output shaft bearing race. You need at least a press that'll do 800 pounds or 900 pounds because there's just over 800 pounds of force on the spring in here. I just use this slide hammer tool, and then you can get down in to get the wire type O-ring or wire type snap ring out of here, and then a pick down there to get this waved snap ring out. Now you just let your pressure off, and then you can take this apart. So now we got everything in the overdrive housing taken apart. You can see the giant spring, sprag, bearing, and your planetaries, and also your overdrive clutches. So we're just gonna check all this stuff out. Everything looks fine. Gonna clean it all out, and yeah, replace these clutches and steels and throw her back together. So now that we got this all packed up, we're gonna have to go back over to the vise, press this down in, and compress that big ass spring again, and line these steels up with the slots as we press it down. All right, so we got our bearings all, or our not bearings, got our clutch overdrive housing back together, bearing on, snap ring on. Our housing is all cleaned out. So now we gotta drop that in and then pinch the snap ring, and it should just fall right in. So when it's in and locked in, there's only gonna be about that much gap between the 2 ends of the snap ring. So now we gotta go back to our snap rings. So we got our flat snap ring that we pulled out. So this is a gas transmission. Looks like it's basically the same transmission, but the gas has 5 plates and the diesel has 6. Put that snap ring in, and this stepped reaction plate. And then we stack our plates. And we'll stack our steels. So then here we have 6 plates that are going in. 6 that are going in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then the final plate there, and then this wire snap ring goes in the groove to keep those in place. And there we go. Our overdrive housing is all assembled. and ready to go. I just got to get the plate back on here with some new bolts because these ones are kind of crap. Alright, so we got our overdrive housing done, so now we're moving on to the main body. So this here is our direct drum. This one here, it is all worn and weavy, and the band's been steel on steel on it for it looks like a little while, so this drum is no good. I mean, somebody would probably put it in, but I don't really want to have a comeback on this tranny, so I went and got one out of the core that I had in the back, and this one is still perfectly smooth, right as rain, so we're gonna go with this one. So, alright, so we got our direct drum here. I already did the new one. This is the old one that's all burnt, or not burnt, but all scored up. I just wanted to show you, give an example of it. So you'll want to remove this snap ring that's up in the top, and then you'll dump out your clutches. You can see I've already got them out here. So they'll come out like this. You'll have a thick plate, then a friction. You can see we've had some wearage on there, also on the steel. And then I just alternate steel friction, steel friction, steel friction, the same as all the other ones. So then, you're going to need to press this piece here down and remove this snap ring. Then this plate will come off. Then there's these springs down inside of here. Remember how these springs go back in. So this one has a 1 tooth gap, 2 tooth gap, 3 tooth gap. You got to remember how those go in because they're different for each style of transmission. And then this bottom plate down here will come out. And then this is your apply piston. So right here there's a lip seal that'll come out. You can see you want it so the lip is facing up. And then also in here there's also a lip seal halfway down the shaft. And then you clean all that up, install a new aluminum apply piston. Comes with the rebuild kit. Put the springs back in and do all that jazz and push that back down. And then once that is done, you'll be to this point. And this one here is ready to put the plates back in. So we have new steels, new frictions, but as you can see here, the factory has 1, 2, 3, 4 frictions, and our kit's gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how you accomplish putting the extra plates in is by machining this thick plate. So you can see there's a groove machined into it, so it will come up and you can still get the snap ring and stuff in around it, and that helps us to get more friction material and more holding material into our transmission. Alright guys, so we got our direct drum done. So the So basically, like this one has 5 plates. The factory one had 4 plates, 4 frictions. So to get the extra friction in there, you have your reaction plate here that is machined. So this kit comes with 2 different reaction plates. One's thinner, one's thicker. Also comes with different sized steels. One is thicker, one is thinner. So between the different thicknesses and everything, you have to get to your spec basically for the clearance, which is 98 to 160 thou. So that will kind of adjust your time from first to second shifts. The more space in here, the more of a delay you'll have when it goes to shift from second to third, from the time the band releases on here to the time the piston applies the direct gear, or direct drive piston. So I am sitting at 108 thou, and to get there I kind of had to stack some feeler gauges. So you can see here, that is 108 thou. Now, since it has that lip there, I can't really get right under the snap ring, so I'm just going between the clutches. And you can see right there, 108 thousandths of an inch. Slides in, slight drag. So this direct drum is good to go back in the tranny. So I'm going to set it aside for now and start moving on to the forward clutch, which has our input shaft in it. Oh, and this kit all I'm using also comes with a 74 thousandths of an inch thick snap ring to get rid of this waved snap ring that is on the direct clutch. So we're moving on to here. Same deal, pop the snap ring out, pull all the plates out, the Belleville spring, clean everything up, and then we'll get ready to assemble. All right, so we got our forward clutch apart. We have our drum, input shaft, clutch pack, Belleville spring, apply piston, Belleville spring spacer, waved snap ring to hold the Belleville spring and spacer, and exterior snap ring. So this unit here, we're just basically going to re-clutch it. These ones actually aren't too bad. We're just going to reuse the factory input shaft, clean it up, put new seals on it, put new lip seals on the pistons, so the inner one here and the outer one here. And then our spec we are looking for is 25 to 36 thou. So let's get all this cleaned up, repacked, reclutched, and get her done. All right, guys, so we got our forward clutch pack ready to go. Got our input shaft put back in, our Belleville spring put back in, spacer and waved watcher put back in, or wave snap ring. So when you're putting your Belleville spring in, you just have to make sure that it goes back in the way it came out. So now we are ready to put our clutches back in. So this one, there's 4 clutches, 4 frictions that need to go in, along with our new backing plate. So that'll go in first. Then a clutch plate. Clearance you want to get out of this is 25 to 36 thou. There are different thicknesses of steels that you can choose from, so you can get the clearance that you need for that. And then we're going to use our factory reaction plate. Put our snap ring back in. So I got a little too much clearance in here right now, so I'm going to take the plate out and put a thicker steel into one of them. So there we go. We got our 26 thou feeler gauge in there, and min spec is 25 thou. So we are right on where we want to be. Don't want to be too loose, but don't want to be too tight. So we got those clutches done. Now we can start replacing our Teflon rings. So the input shaft has 1, 2, 3. So the input shaft has 3 Teflon rings on it. There's one here, and one here. So we pop those off and then put new ones on. So once you have your forward drum all put back together, then you take your direct drum and slide it down over top and kind of shimmy it around like so while holding this, while holding the input shaft, and you'll feel it click, 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 step down in. And then this whole unit here is ready to go back in the transmission. We also changed the rings, what do you call them? Washers on the pump. Took the pump apart. You're basically just cleaning out the gear inside and making sure it's not scratched up or nicked or anything like that. We'll also change this seal as well, the pump seal in the front of the transmission. So that is ready to go. Okay, so now that we got our case all cleaned up, basically we'll put everything back together in the reverse order that it came out. Starting with the overdrive piston. There was a lip seal inside of here and a lip seal on the outside of here as well that you need to change. And then that's all said and done. Now we just lay her back down and start piling everything back in. So you can see, low reverse clutch, you know you got it in the right way when it'll, or you know you have it in proper when it'll spin clockwise and then lock counterclockwise. So once you get your pump set down in, you want to torque it to 20 Newton meters or 15 foot-pounds. So here we're rebuilding our rear band actuator. Basically, you just clean it up and your kit will come with a new seal. This one is ripped, obviously, just from taking it off. Here's your new seal, your spring, your hold down, and your clip. So I'll basically just install this the same way that that old one came out. And there we go, right like that. So now, just gonna take a little bit of blue goo. Put that in there. Bring the tranny over here. So it's going to go in this way because the actuator, an adjuster for the band, will ride in here. So what you want to do is just put it in there like so on an angle and spin it, and boom, just go right down in there. Like that. Take your spring, put that in. Take your spring hold down, put that in. This band, this actuator, you can just push down in like so. With the spring, it's not very stiff. Just walk around it and she'll pop in right like that. So now, since we got this in, we can put this band back, this actuator back in. So the pin that goes in these two slots in the case just slides back in there. Right there, you can see it. And there we go, we got it in. I'm just gonna run it in so it touches, just so it's not flopping around. It's right like that. So this one here is good to go. Now we're going to move on to the front actuator. So again, you got your snap ring, I believe this is the lower piece. This one has a little more rebuilding to it, or resealing. It's got an O-ring, or not an O-ring, a sealing ring right here. Just take a pick. Pop that off. Take a pick here. And then we got that over here. This one also has a snap ring in there. So we're gonna pull that out and grab one out of another transmission that I have sitting on the floor. Alright, so I got a new actuator out of a transmission I got sitting in the back. You can see that C-clamp is still intact. So, the kit will come with your new seals and rings for the transmission, or for the actuator. Put that in there. And these ones are like a steel or a composite ring, kind of like a piston ring. There's that. There we go. Those are in. So this one here is going to go in the bottom. So I'm just going to put a little bit of the blue goo on the bottom ring here. And the top ring here. So that'll just, the top of the hole is tapered so it'll pop in. There, it slides down in. Put a spring in. So then you're going to take your C-clamp, put it in, put a socket on between the C-clamp and the top of the actuator so the rod inside can go up through. Then once it's down, you can pop your snap ring in. Then just let her off. You take your anchor that comes in your kit. Do that. That goes in there. And then this billet lever arm goes in this end. Right, like so. Then we'll just come to the other side and just run this adjuster in to take up all the slack that's there. Just to keep it in there and make sure nothing's gonna come out of alignment there. So there we go, we got our two bands in. Still gonna have to adjust them, but we'll just leave that how it is for now. So I gotta do some work on the valve body on this thing. So we're gonna skip putting the valve body in for now. But right now I'm going to stand it up on end and put the overdrive housing on. Alright, so we got our new gasket in here, and I put like a skim of silicone on each side of the gasket. Don't forget to put this thrust washer in here. And in the back of the overdrive housing, there is a bearing that has to go down to ride on this shim. So it'll just fit over a edge that's in there. So then, just take this unit here. Not the lightest thing out there. So, got our housing down, or housing on. If it doesn't go down all the way, you can just kind of pull it down with the bolts. So I left these ones loose and sucked it down in with the opposite 2 bolts on each side, so it'll go down evenly. You can see, it turns one way, won't turn the other way because of the one-way clutch in the back of the housing. So now you can put the rest of these down and they get torqued to 20 foot-pounds. Alright guys, so we got our valve body all said and done with. So now we're getting ready to install it. And we are installing a dual sealed upgraded billet accumulator plug, or accumulator piston in this transmission. This is a must-have in all tranny builds of the 47RE, 48RE. So you can see the stock one here made of plastic, 1 sealing ring on the top, 1 on the bottom. Now this one's a BD one because that came with the kit, but there's other companies that sell them as well. Power Driven Diesel is another company that I deal with that, yeah, where they also have them as well in their transmission kits. Sonax has them. Yeah. So this is a BD diesel billet one. Now I don't have any preference on the company of them. Like BD is a good company. That's the kit that I bought for this transmission. So that's the kit that I'm going to use. So it goes down in this bore right here. As you can see, there is 2 seals on the top, 2 seals on the bottom, and that is going to give us a lot less leakage past them if there is any. So let's get that slid down in. There we go, that slides in right like that. Now in our Transgo kit that we had for the transmission, came with a new accumulator spring, so that installs right down in there. And now we are ready to bring our valve body up and get it on. First I'm going to spin this tranny around so these 2 holes are facing me on this side of the bench. So I got it turned around here and facing the way so these 2 holes are facing towards me. And what goes in those 2 holes is your electrical connector and the shift rod. So this here is your park rod, and that lines up in this channel back here. So when you're putting this in, rod has to slide down into the bottom there, and then line up your 2 shafts, or your electrical connector and your shaft. Now to get that park rod in, sometimes you have to grab the output shaft and rotate it because the park pawl may be on a notch, so it's fallen down in and locked. So there, you can see right there, it just kind of fell down in. And there we go. Now there are 4 longer bolts that go in the housing down here. There's 2 slightly longer bolts that'll go in here. And then 1 slightly longer bolt that goes in here. And then these 3 shorties, one goes here, one goes here, and the other one's here. And they're a 7/16, so I'm just gonna run down by hand. So now I got all those ran down in. The torque spec on those is 100 inch-pounds. There we go, we got all those torqued down to 100 inch-pounds. Now we put filter on. These 3 retaining bolts, which go right here. So there we have it, guys and gals. Way to get a new tranny pan on it, because the one that I had, somebody liked drilling drain holes and stuff, and that one had a hole in it as well. So we got a new pan. You can see this one actually has a drain on it, which is quite snazzy. Got our torque converter in, pre-filled it with about a liter of fluid because I didn't want to make a huge mess putting it on. But basically, you pre-fill it, sit it down in, and kind of wiggle it, like shake it back and forth and kind of wiggle it side to side, just till you feel it click all the way down in. And I put a strap on here, so when the customer comes and picks it up, that converter will not move. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and found it informative. And don't forget to like us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, and follow us on Instagram. And if you have any questions, comments, anything like that, drop her down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.